This is episode 14 with Dr. Stephanie Stanfield. Change a word, change your life. As they say, the show must go on. Hi there. Thanks for pushing play on this episode of Living the Good Life. I know you have lots of options on how to spend your time and who to listen to, so please know that I'm honored that you are here. I've been a little under the weather this week. Perhaps you can hear it in my voice. While I'm mostly feeling back to normal, I don't quite sound it yet. But it was important to me to bring you this conversation today with Dr. Steph. As I'm sure you'll pick up on, Dr. Steph and I go back a ways. Even still, I gained a little fresh perspective from today's conversation. I appreciate Dr. Steph's support of the show, along with our friends at Texas Media TV and the delightful Paige Slaughter over at Fruition Studio. Fruition Studio helps entrepreneurs embrace marketing and build community through effective content creation. Paige offers a variety of email marketing, copywriting, and design services, and Fruition Studio wants to help you connect with customers and grow your business. So find more info and some really great free tools over at fruitionstudio.com. As we receive feedback from you, this show is evolving. Join us at the Living the Good Life Facebook group to chime in with your questions for upcoming guests, feedback on current and previous episodes, get deeper information on the topics we've covered, and get a sneak peek at what's coming next. Just search on Facebook for the Living the Good Life group, and soon, yes, there will be free resources and giveaways. Now, let's join the conversation with Dr. Steph. Our guest today is an author, a coach. She's a former pilot and a world traveler. She has a PhD in energy therapies and a Doctor of Theology in spiritual counseling. She's also a Reiki master. She's my fellow Toastmaster. And she has so many other credentials to her name. Dr. Stephanie Stanfield, and her company is MakingShiftsHappen.com. MakingShiftsHappen.com. Dr. Steph, welcome to our show today.
Thank you, Kim. It's so nice to be here. I really appreciate this opportunity.
I love talking with you. And just to be clear and let everyone know, we know each other. We spend a lot of time together. And so I know your work, and I'm really excited to share it with those who are listening.
Thank you. And yes, we do. We spend a great amount of time together, and it's always delightful.
You've got a lot of heavyweight credentials behind your name. I didn't even get to all of them. What kind of started you down this path? Have you always been, this wise, incredible healer, or where did you come from?
My dad was in the military, and so we moved around a lot until my parents divorced when I was 14. And then at that point, we lived in Tampa. And one of the things about the military is when you're in the military, everybody has the same kind of a historical experience of not having long-term friends, because we moved every 16 months. We were in Germany for 3 years, and we lived in two different places, Ramstein and Bitburg, and my younger sister was actually born in Bitburg. So there's a unique growing up experience that people in the military seem to have, and they bond together over the fact that they can't bond together. It's really an interesting phenomenon. And it was a challenge when we moved off base, because most everybody had been lifelong friends from kindergarten on. You're grouped in school districts and all of that kind of stuff. So I came into a place where I didn't know anybody, and that was okay, because I knew in the military you don't know people and you make friends pretty quickly. It didn't work too well in this situation, but I did bond with a beautiful young lady. Her name was Mary, and we're still friends today, umpteen years later. So with that diverse background, you kind of became independent and figured out how to manage yourself in different situations. And when I came out to Colorado after I graduated from college, I just never wanted to leave. And I settled in and got married fairly soon, and I had 2 sons. And then I started getting a lot of chronic illnesses like allergies that would put me down. And then I had a 15-year history of migraines, and I wasn't getting better. And basically my doctor told me, you'll probably be dead by the time you're 35 because you're so reactive to everything in your environment. And I worked at the hospital at the time. I worked at Valley View here in Glenwood, and I was non-clinical. I was not a nurse, but eventually I taught CPR. And that's one of the interesting interesting things. Every job that I've ever had, people recognize that I like to coach and mentor and teach. And so they put me in teaching positions somehow. When I worked at a bank, they had me training tellers. When I worked at the hospital, they had me teaching CPR, even though I wasn't a nurse. So I was getting sicker and sicker, and I did not know what to do. And eventually the hospital eliminated my position because of excessive absenteeism. And here I was, a single parent with 2 kids and very sick. And I took a course that since March of 1997, I have been pretty much migraine-free and allergy symptom-free. And I had to find out how training my brain differently improved my health.
So you took a course. I just want to be clear on the process of things. You took a course and then you became symptom free, basically. What kind of course was it? Did you take it going in knowing that that's what the outcome or the desired outcome was going to be?
No, I had no clue. The course that I took was pain management course, but it was based on the integration of mind, body, soul, and spirit. And when you begin the holistic approach to your health, you have different outcomes if you just treat symptoms. So symptom treatment is basically what conventional medicine does, and they're great at it. Dressing the whole person. There was a movie from the line from a movie in Patch Adams, where Robin Williams, who's Patch Adams was actually a real doctor. I don't know how many people knew that. Where he said, you treat the disease, you win, you lose. You treat the person, I guarantee you'll win every time.
Yeah, I love that movie. And thank you for bringing that back to the forefront of my mind, because that was such an exceptional example of really reaching down and like you say, treat the human being, because that makes such a big difference in everything, not just the specific symptoms of that disease, but life in general just gets better when you're treated with compassion and kindness. And what's the word when you feel like somebody's taking you seriously? Because so often when you go in to, say, a doctor, there's that feeling that they're just kind of rolling their eyes at you behind the scenes and they don't really hear what's going on with you. So feeling heard can make a world of difference, I guess.
Feeling heard and being seen are primary in what I do. They're primary because so many times, as you were just doing, we struggle for a word. Well, a lot of times we don't have words to describe what's going on. We don't have words that are accurate for a description. I know sometimes we mislabel our emotions depending on what was said to us when we were growing up. One of my favorite examples of this is a little kid was excited, about doing a roller coaster ride, and they're excited and they're just kind of shaking and moving from foot to foot, and they can't wait to get on the ride. And then the parent looks down and says, "Now don't be scared." Well, now they start to associate being excited with scared. And that's kind of a lifelong mislabeling. When they get that excitement and they get that inner thrill and they start looking forward to something, they say, "Oh, I must be scared." That's a scary thing. So a lot of people mislabel emotions and therefore miss a lot of great experiences that they can be having because of a simple mislabel.
I heard of a study recently, or I don't know if you would call it a study, but somebody did a little bit of research on that feeling of nerves when you're about ready to step on stage, whether to give a speech or do a performance or an athletic endeavor. People that feel really frightened, nervous, and scared to go on and onto that stage or onto that performance. And then people who are excelling in the sports world. I think it really is where they took this was the sports world, and the people that are champions and the people that get off and are super excited about their performance. So they compared the two. They compared the people that were reporting feeling scared and frightened and nervous and the people who were feeling excited. And they determined that it was the same feeling. It was the exact same feeling, but the people who were feeling nervous didn't perform as well because they interpreted that as nerves and fright and fear. And the people who were interpreting that as excitement performed better. So I think that's fascinating. And that really kind of undergirds what you were just saying.
Right. And one of the things that I work with my clients on is the philosophy of change a word, change your life. So they might say, "I'm really scared about this." And I say, "Can you say you're really excited about this?" No, I'm scared." no, this is scare. This is fear. And I said, well, you're producing the same biochemicals and emotional state, and the eyes dilate and other things happen with excitement as with fear. So if you could just start saying, I'm excited instead of I'm afraid or I'm nervous or I'm anxious. One of the other things that I work about is the word worried. I'm worried about. And you're just projecting worry into the future. And I say, can you change the word to curious? Instead of being worried about, I'm curious about, I'm wondering about. And that changes that whole dynamic of mislabeling emotions that are there to help you, that are there, like you said, to get a person out on stage and really thrill with the experience and have a great time. They can change it. I'm excited instead of I'm scared.
Yeah. I love the idea that our life is an experience. It's a stage, if you will. It is to be relished and enjoyed. And the only thing stopping us from doing that is the thoughts in our own brain. Because no matter what situation you're in, you can choose to find joy in just about everything. So it's like you say, it's choose how you're going to approach it with your words and hopefully with your thoughts and your actions too.
And you mentioned a study. I've done lots of research over the years, and I still read studies that are being published. And something that people don't realize is that our thoughts are habituated and our thoughts produce emotions. And one study that really opened my eyes and let me know how empowered I can be is one that says 60% of our thoughts are repetitive. So we think 60% of the same thoughts over and over and over. It's kind of like the Groundhog Day without changing. And a great percentage of those, between 45 and 50% of those habituated thoughts, are negative.
Oh, that's so true. And they say that you are more unkind to yourself than you are to anyone else. So when you think about those negative thoughts, most of them are self-directed, right?
Right. And they're running in the background. I mean, we can only have one thought at a time. It's kind of, I'll go to a pilot analogy, right? There can only be one active airplane on a runway at a time. So we can only have one active thought at a time. But that doesn't mean that there are multiple thousands and millions, because we have trillions of connections, right, in the brain, and they're always active. That's not saying that we don't have millions of thoughts happening in the background. We're just conscious of that one that's landing in the conscious arena of a thought. So we don't know about all of those. And so when you begin to understand some of this, you can actually change your habituated thoughts so that you're running good positive thoughts in the background as well.
This all sounds really wonderful. And we've had these discussions before, you and I personally, so it's great that we get to share this conversation. But I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, because I think that there's so many people, and I've been there and I still go there from time to time, where you're afraid you're fooling yourself. So yeah, I can sit here and say everything's wonderful, but what if it's really not wonderful? How do you get past that fear of deluding yourself? And why is that fearful? Why do we care if we're deluding ourselves? Are we waiting for the bottom to fall out? I don't know. Maybe I answered my own question, or maybe I'm just in this philosophical vacuum.
What if your fearful thoughts are even more delusional than your happy thoughts?
What?
And a lot of people will tell me, Stephanie, you can't be Pollyanna all the time. Well, I'm not. I have those reminders that come up to let me know that maybe there are certain areas in my life where I need to come back and do a little bit more reminding of, I can change a word and change this experience. We're not thinking Pollyanna here. We are knowing that it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. There's only one word in those two sentences that change, and energy will follow intention. So I'm looking at the name of your show, Living the Good Life. Is that mean that you want to just have everything positive? No. You want to understand that people will go through different things during the course of the day. You can feel 20 emotions in 10 seconds. They just run through that quickly. What makes it more real is that you have chosen an outlook on life. I have studied optimism with Martin Seligman, and he says, I'm basically a pessimist. I basically want to find out what's wrong so that I'm not surprised when something bad happens. That's kind of the pessimist perspective. And he said, but I'm learning to be an optimist. I'm learning for what good can happen. And then I'm pleasantly surprised when the good happens. And one of the prime examples of this is if you look for the bad expands. If you look for the good expands. And one of the easiest examples of this is that when you tell your mind and your brain to pay attention to something, you will get more and more of that in your life. So, have you ever bought a new car for you? Before you bought that car and you were trying to decide what kind of car you wanted, you may have seen that make and model before. And you may have thought, that's a nice car, maybe I'll have it. Maybe I'll buy it one day. But once you buy it, you see them everywhere on the road, right?
Yes.
Same color, same year, and then you buy the car and you see it everywhere. Okay. Does
Yes.
that make your car bad or good, or just your experience of the car?
It makes it average.
It could make it really good because enough people were smart enough to buy the same car that you did.
You can have 20 emotions about that car in 10 seconds.
Yes, you can.
That experience.
And the car itself does not change, right? It's not
Right.
like the manufacturers went out and put a million more of those cars on the road so that you would feel your car is average. They were there all the time.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, it does make so much sense. And I have had that experience, absolutely. And I know other people have as well. My question to you, though, is there scientific evidence on this theory? Has anybody really studied this? Because I can hear my pessimistic friends in my head right now going, yeah, that's just a bunch of silliness.
There's a lot of studies on this. And as I mentioned, Martin Seligman, he's probably one of the most highly regarded and well-known people because he states flat out, I'm a pessimist, but I understand how much better optimism is for me, my health, and my life. I get it. And then Rupert Sheldrake, he wrote several research projects and a book on morphic resonance and the field of morphic resonance. And one of his books that I loved was How Dogs Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home. And what he says is when you set an intention, it fills your energy field with that intention. And they have done studies, actual studies, and you have dogs, so this might be of interest to you, that when the owner of the dog is at work and they think about coming home and they start getting ready, the dogs know this and they go stand by the door to wait for the owners to come home. And like attracts like. So let's think of this quality. We have opposites attract, which is true because it's an electrical dynamic. And then we have like attracts like, which is a magnetic dynamic. And both of these are true. They're the same thing as gravity. When I drop something on the floor, I know it's going to fall to the floor and not float to the ceiling. So if I think positive thoughts, and I look for ways to change a word and change my experience or my life, then I begin to attract more of those experiences because I'm creating a brain that looks for those experiences now the same way I have trained myself to look for my car. And sometimes people, even if they see their car in a row of similar cars, they know that's their car because they've understood the features of the car enough that even if there's 2 or 3 cars down the road that look exactly like, or down the parking spaces that look exactly like it, they know where their car is because it's theirs. The same type of thing. I own that I am more optimistic than pessimistic. I own that I want to change my life and attract more positive people into my life. I own that I want to have more positive emotions than negative emotions. And that's what I do. And I see where my positive people, like you, we spend a lot of time together. Why? Because we feel good in each other's company.
Most of the time, yeah. No.
And Kim, the more you can laugh, the better, because a 10-second burst of laughter improves your immune system for 6 hours. A 10-second burst of anger takes you out of the loop for about 12 to 14 hours.
So, Stephanie, you've been a pilot, which is kind of extreme. You've traveled the world, which is pretty cool. You've written books. You went from taking a course and becoming allergy-free to diving into not only a PhD, but also a Doctor of Theology at the same time?
Mm-hmm. It was a dual tract.
That's pretty extreme. Why did you do that?
You use the word extreme. I would say that that's pretty interesting because I really did want to learn how taking a course, not medication, not symptom treatment, I had to learn how taking a course on pain management could improve my life so dramatically. And I guess that takes me back into I'm a lifelong learner. So my dad was in the military. He was a fighter pilot. He flew, he was a flying tiger. He flew 4 active tours of duty and he was actually shot down in Vietnam and he survived. And he was a great role model for do what you need to do to come out of it in good shape. So he taught me how to fly. He taught my older sister how to fly, and she was actually a commercial pilot and taught flight instruction. We had a little flying service down at the end of our little 3,000-foot strip that's not much better than a grass strip. And it was something that when you learn something new every day, you grow not only as a person, but you grow mentally and emotionally and physically and spiritually in ways that enhance your life for years to come. And you get in a room with pilots, oh my gosh, the stories they could tell. And you just sometimes sit enthralled and wonder how they walked away from certain situations. And I was fortunate to have an excellent pilot. My dad and I were flying one time, and we had a pretty severe crosswind. And we have 2 different channels here that funnel the wind down onto the field, and it splats. And you can see the flags at either end of the field going either opposite directions or pointing towards each other or pointing different ways because the wind will come down these channels and splat. And so we had set up to do a downwind, and I was about 800 feet above the ground. And we flew by a 3-mile channel, and the plane turned upside down.
Mm.
And I just started freaking out. And my dad says, I have the airplane. I said, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. He said, no, follow me through it. And I said, okay, got it. And he showed me what to do to recover the aircraft because everything has to be opposite when you're upside down. Can't do the things that you do when you're flying right side up. And I'll never forget that. He was just so calm and unperturbed. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, yeah. I mean, he survived 4 active tours of duty. He was shot at almost every mission he flew. He couldn't afford to get freaked out. And for him, it was exciting, not fearful. So I now just understand a whole lot more. And I went down to a simulator and I flew upside down until I could figure it out so that it wouldn't ever make me fearful again. It would just be, okay, this is how we recover.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
You don't even think about that. Well, of course, until you're in a situation where it
Yeah.
would be necessary. That's incredible.
I'd never flown upside down.
I have never flown upside down. That's something we have in common.
And yet we did. And you can recover from it if you know what to do. So that became my driving passion. I can pretty much manage anything in my life, even flying upside down, if I learn what to do to get out of it.
Now, it's important for us to share a little something about you. And that is, there's so many coaches out there. And I know what you're really focusing on in your current business is your wellness coaching program for people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Case in point right here. So we want to talk a little bit about the differentiation of coaches, because right now, coaches, you can find a coach, a wellness coach who took a weekend seminar, or somebody who has a PhD. So how do you help somebody know what direction to go, and why is your program different?
Thanks for asking that, Kim, because I think I have one of the few clinically researched coaching programs because I used my program for my dissertation. So I had to have groups that were a certain number. They call it an N number. I had to have participatory groups and control groups. I had to have measurements. And so I used two different tools, and both of them were subjective. In other words, you answered the questions from your perspective. I didn't take blood pressures or anything like that. I had two different tools for measurement, which gave me 21 categories of measurement for improvement. And at the end, the participant group took the program, the control group did not. The control group, standard practice usually, did not have any changes. And then I gave the program to the control group, and they became the participants. And at the end of 6 months, the original participant group still were holding to the changes that they made in the program, because I had to track short-term and long-term sustainable changes. And in 19 of 21 categories of measurement, there were two I had to toss because I couldn't get them to come out correctly. We had statistically significant improvement. And the highest category of improvement, Kim, energy. People had more energy. So when someone says, how does your program work, or what benefits do I get? I can pull out my research and show them. This is what most people experienced in my research. And I've been published, because you have to publish your dissertation. And I have written a couple of articles that have been published as well. It sounds good. It sounds good to say, oh, you'll feel better, but you can't quantify that. When I say you'll have more energy, you'll have more emotional balance, you'll have less pain. I can show the documentation of people that have gone through the program that can show that this is absolutely true.
That's something that holds so much weight, so much credibility. So that really lends weight to everything that we've spoken about today. Is you've not only done the work, but you've done the research, and other people have benefited from the program that you created. That's amazing. One last question for you. What is the thing that comes to mind when I say, what's an experience that gives you pure, unadulterated joy?
That is so easy. Being with my children and my grandchildren. There's just no contest.
You can tell me the real answer later. I know that you're telling the truth, because I am also a grandma, and there is just nothing that compares to the joy and the experiences that your kids and your grandkids are having. So I concur.
That one's pretty easy. That's my children have understood. They don't always listen to what I have to suggest, but they have understood. And my youngest son especially, I think, is a healer in his own right. And he just takes to things like duck to water. And my older son, I called him my crash test dummy, because as I was learning all these things, I'd come home and I'd say, let me practice on you. Let me practice on you.
All right. Barring your children, putting the children in the family aside, what's one other luxurious thing you do for yourself?
I enjoy my friends. I enjoy living in Colorado, walking outdoors, being in nature. I just love where I live. I think I'm so blessed on so many levels. I love learning. I love expanding. I love spending time in nature and with friends and family.
I love chocolate. I'm just going to be real here. I just love it. Stephanie, say chocolate.
Chocolate.
Well, this has been a real pleasure. It's been a joy. I've even learned a few things about you that I didn't know, like flying upside down. Like, when did that ever come up? It never did. I'm glad we had this opportunity. If you would like to reach out to Dr. Stephanie Stanfield at Making Shifts Happen, another episode, we're going to have to talk about that name, Making Shifts Happen. You can find her at her website at makingshiftshappen.com and learn all about the wellness coaching program there, and all of her credentials, and all of the things that she has to offer, her books, and everything is just a wealth of information. And Dr. Steph has her own podcast. If you want to check that out, I believe that's at the website as well.
It is.
Fantastic. All right. You have a great day. Thank you so much. Laughter is really the best medicine. Don't you love that feeling of easy conversation with someone, whether you've known them for years? Sometimes even just a moment, you just kind of fall into step and the conversation flows. Thanks again to Dr. Steph for joining us. It's my pleasure, as always, to share this time with you. I'm excited about what's to come, and I would love to hear from you on what would help you to live the good life. Or if you feel like you're already living a life of joy and vitality each day and you have some tips to share with us, I'd love to hear those too. Reach out at my website, KimberlyHenry.com, or join the Living the Good Life Facebook community and chime in there. Have an amazing day and get out there and live the good life.